Today's gospel reading, the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector, this is a narrative from Luke. And in Luke's narrative, Jesus has drawn near to Jerusalem and his final earthly days. This parable appears to be about humility, but it is much more complicated. The apparent message is against a Pharisee notion that doing the right things earns your way into the afterlife, and contrarily, that recognizing and confessing your shortcomings is good. But that understanding begs two very key words. In the first verse, the word translated righteous, and in the last sentence, the word translated justified. In the Greek, they are the same word, and they stand in for the Hebrew word we usually translate righteousness, one of three words that are absolutely fundamental to all of Judaism and Christianity: righteousness, justice, and mercy. To know what we have committed ourselves to, we must wrestle with those three words whose meanings are much more complex than they sound to us.
The Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord Christ.
Jesus told this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and regarded others with contempt. Two men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee, standing by himself, was praying thus: God, I thank you that I am not like other people, thieves, rogues, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give a tenth of all my income. But the tax collector, standing far off, would not even look up to heaven, but was beating his breast and saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his home justified rather than the other. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, but all who humble themselves will be exalted. This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Please be seated. Well, thank goodness we're not like that Pharisee, right? Zing! Oh, Luke takes down that fourth wall, and there we are. So, one thing that we get a little background on this morning, in addition to the wonderful background that we've had, okay? Righteousness, justice, mercy. There is a prayer that Jewish men say every morning. And to our Gentile 21st century ears, it might sound, very might sound sexist, might sound racist, might sound all sorts of things. But the core of that prayer that men specifically say is, God, you've given me the most responsibility. Because you see, of all those over 600 laws that are in Torah, men have to follow more of them than anyone else. So the core of that prayer is, I'm not a woman, I'm not a servant, I'm not a foreigner, I'm not this, I'm not that. Thank you for making me who I am. Help me to be righteous, which really is help me to be in relationship. Help me to be just. Help me to be merciful. But as we all know, prayers that we say over and over and over again, sometimes the meanings sort of wash away. Sometimes the meanings get a little twisted. So what I believe we have this morning is two people truly thinking that they're praying exactly the way they ought to. And the Pharisee, while we first condemn him for just, being a word I shouldn't say in church, he's actually trying to go in the right direction. But this prayer that he's been saying forever no longer seems to hold that core of, Lord, help me be responsible. Lord, help me be merciful. Help me be just. And instead it's like, aren't I special? Have you ever had any prayers, anything, any faith sayings that sometimes lose their meaning, sometimes lose their original meaning? Yeah? Okay, so one of mine, and it really wasn't until I, dragged myself into a 12-step meeting years ago, and I saw something that said, "There but for the grace of God go I." Now that phrase has always angered me. But when I looked at it in probably what its core light was, which was, all right, God, I don't know why I'm still alive. I don't know why I'm still, able to function. But, you got me here. And so I'm going to be grateful. And I'm going to try and do the right thing. But that's a prayer that sometimes gets to be like that, right? Now, to give you some context, when this was in 1999 and 2000, I was the chaplain resident at West Virginia University Hospitals in Morgantown, West Virginia. I was the ER and ICU chaplain resident of the only, at that time, level 1 trauma unit in the state of West Virginia. Yeah, Donnie, you're making the right face. Yep. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty. And I can't tell you how many times I sat beside people, or I was the voice that no parent ever wants to hear in the middle of the night, with so many people that were saying, where was God? Where was God? Don't give me this, there but for the grace of God. Where was God's grace? With my son, my daughter, my friend. So, as you can imagine, at that point, I didn't have a very good relationship with those words. And in the spring, May of 2000, I got a weekend off, went with a friend on a canoeing retreat in West Virginia. West Virginia has all kinds of whitewater. This was wimp water, still water, class 1, class 2, but it's in a canoe, it's a little different. Canoes don't bounce like rafts do. And the person leading this retreat was also the spiritual director of all the chaplains. So he knew where everything in me was that wasn't pretty. And we're sitting around the first night. We're getting to know each other. And this woman starts telling a story. And, I'm kind of being polite. She's a little irritated. But, she's not being polite. And then she ends the story with, "Well, there, but for the grace of God, go I." And I was like, So we talk a little while longer. We finish our meals, and she starts telling another story. And darned if she doesn't end it with, "There, but for the grace of God." Okay, now I'm getting a little, we get dessert, we sit around this table, we talk for longer, and she starts, third story. Guess what she says? "There, but for the grace of God." Okay, now I'm going off like a rocket. And I finally said, I mean, it was this big dramatic story with, a line of flaming cars, and if she'd just been there, a minute earlier, she would have been in the midst of that, but no, she could, run up and ask the police if they needed help because, she and her husband were pastors and blah, blah, blah. Her husband got a little quiet during this time. And I said, what about the people in those cars? Do you think, was grace there for them too? And at that point, I may or may not have had both shins getting kicked under the table, one from my friend, the other from the spiritual director. I'm like, okay. The next day, we get in our canoes, 2 people in every canoe. My friend and I, and at this point, my friend had a diagnosed getting to be severe hearing impairment, and she could not wear hearing aids because we're in the river and it's the year 2000. Do they have waterproof hearing aids yet? Okay, anyway. And this couple gets in their boat, she's in the front. And we are given a lot of instructions, okay? The water V's like that, go toward it. If the V goes away from you, go around it. And stay away from strainers. What's a strainer? A strainer is a tree that has fallen into the river, and all of those branches are down underneath. For Pete's sake, stay away from the strainers. We're paddling along, and I've got some experience, and my friend has some experience, and we've done this together, and we're not great, but we know kind of which direction to go. And this woman is looking around, she's talking to people, and she's really bubbly and sweet and all this, and just irritating the heck out of me. And she's turned around and she's talking to someone behind us. And all of a sudden we're just yelling, "Look out for the strainer, look out for the strainer." And she says, "What?" And they go under. Now, a lot of people die from strainers, even in calm water, because you can't quite get out. You might be pinned under there. And all of us just, hearts just sunk. And the retreat director / canoeing instructor said, "All right, you two go here, you two go here, you two wait for the boat, you two pick up paddles, and you two," assigned my canoeing partner and I, "you're assigned to her. If she comes up, you tell her to float on her back, tell them both to float on their backs. It's going to be a good quarter mile before they can get to a safe spot. Just have them float on their backs and get them over to shore on the left-hand side, about a quarter mile down. You'll find that eddy." Okay. Thanks be to God. We're right beside you. You'll be okay, but you're going to need to float a quarter of a mile. I have to what? I want to get, no, honey, I'm really sorry. We're right beside you. You're going to be okay. Now, when you've had something like that, a quarter of a mile, i.e. once around the football field, is a long time to wait. But we get, we're right beside her. We get to that calm spot over on the left bank. Get her out. And this is not the same person that got in the canoe that morning. She was so quiet, white as a sheet, looks like a wet baby bird. We get a Mylar blanket around her, someone comes along. I'm watching her and I'm having kind of conflicted feelings, because I feel really bad for her. There's a little bit of me that's still thinking, serves you. Which made me realize later on, she got changed from this experience. Did I? Now, just to drive the point a little more home, the following day, canoeing along, everything's looking good. And somehow my partner and I have some miscommunication. And we wind up hitting a rock and hitting it with such force that the canoe flipped over, didn't break. And I landed in such a way, we were all okay, but I hit the front of my left leg so hard that I could not feel it for a year. Nerve tissue, sidebar, nerve tissue, when it heals at about the rate of a Bible page a day. So I had plenty of time to think about this. And to limp a little bit. And to think about, what did I learn here? This person, of course, after this incident was quiet, very quiet for the rest of the trip, observant, gentle, receptive. And I'm probably still trying to get there, you know? To be gentle, to be receptive, all of those things. No matter how many times we've said the words of the Eucharist and the Creed and etc. over and over and over again, we can't let them lose their most essential, most core message to us. That righteousness is relationship. Righteousness is doing justice, is having mercy, is receiving, not pushing out, but remembering, putting it back together again. Remember that all of our ancestors were once in Egypt. Remember that how they traveled. Remember